Very good morning to everybody. At the onset, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for having invited me as a symposium speaker. I'm glad to be speaking on Unlocking the Mystery, a guide to PCOS. I would also like to proclaim a disclaimer. I'm not a gynecologist. What I'm speaking will be for the adolescent PCOS. And with the time period, we can sort of only skim through it. So there will be many aspects which will be there as questions, and probably we can see if questions are allowed and we can discuss. Sort of covering a lot of clinical features, investigations and management, and I think the main conflict in adolescent PCO is with the definition. When should we label somebody as an adolescent PCO? So dealing with that, PCO is a heterogeneous multi-system endocrinopathy in women of the reproductive age. It's a chronic anovulation which may finally result in infertility. Irregular bleeding, obesity and hirsutism can be seen in the earlier age itself. And most common cause of androgen excess would be PCOS in girls of the reproductive age. It was initially described in 1935, and I grew up learning in postgraduate life as the Stein-Leventhal syndrome, and now it's been put as a polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it also affects a large group of 4 to 6% of the population. We are seeing more and more cases of question mark adolescent PCO with the lifestyle and the stress which is there in their daily life. It's also a cause of anovulation, and 20 to 30% of normal women who are not PCOs also demonstrate ovarian follicles or polycystic ovarian syndrome in their ultrasound. So that is now, it is the first basis on which we are going forward is that the ovarian follicles being visible on ultrasound is normal in women, that is adult, to 20 to 30%. In adolescent age, it is completely normal and not considered as a criteria for PCO at all. So what we should understand, that anybody coming in with that report, naturally we screen them and we go through it, but it is not a criteria to say yes, they are PCOs. So just going with the case, a 14-year-old girl presents to the OPD with her mother, and she has attained menarche a year ago, but her cycles are very irregular and sometimes up to 2 months. And mild acne she has, and she has gained a lot of weight in the last 6 months. She doesn't have any hirsutism at present. The family history is that the mother also had irregular cycles during her adolescence, but she was okay by 18 years. So there's no family history of diabetes, which we just took as a risk factor for the insulin resistance, etc. Her height and weight is slightly over the, above the percentile, 85th percentile. There's no hyperpigmentation or acanthosis. Ferriman-Galway is the scoring system for the hirsutism. If we label the adolescent as at risk, we can even take serial photographs to see if the score increases. This is freely available online. There's mild acne and she is SMR stage 5. So if she is investigated, her ultrasound shows normal ovarian follicles, but one thing important is that ovarian volume. So we not only have to pay attention to the number, we have to pay attention to the volume also. And her hormones were slightly high. Testosterone is normal. Her thyroid and prolactin and 17-OHP were normal. Now, as a pediatrician, if I have access to a gynecologist, I refer all my doubts to a gynecologist. I do not treat or do excess hormonal investigations unless I have some reference, or you have treated similar patients in the past. But when there's no gynecologist, I would say these would be some of the basic investigations that we can go across. So the key points here is that it does mimic a PCO with the irregular periods and obesity. But it does not fulfill all the diagnostic criteria, and in the earlier period, as we pointed out earlier, and Dr. Snehal also brought it out, that irregular periods are quite normal, And acne is, we know it's a feature of adolescence. Ultrasound appearance is normal. We said it is not a criteria, so we should not label it. However, now the international guidelines say that if there's a family history or we have got some 2 out of the 3 criteria and things like that, we can label them as adolescent at risk for PCO, and they have to be followed up, and the similar treatment for lifestyle, guidance, insulin resistance, etc. should be followed, and they can be serially monitored. By 18, we know if they are PCO or not a PCO. So, coming to the introduction of a criteria, the commonest and most commonly followed is the Rotterdam criteria. I would also say it's one of the simplest criteria to follow, in which they say that 2 out of the 3 criteria should be present, one being oligomenorrhea or anovulation. In oligomenorrhea, we have said there's a definition as per the gynecological age. So now we have what? That when they achieve the menarche, it is the beginning of the gynecological age, and all definitions of PCO in adolescent are up to 8 gynecological years. So after that they come into the adult criteria for PCO. And hypoandrogenism, it's clinical or biochemical. So if there's clinical evidence, we go in for testosterone, DHEA and other investigation, and with the exclusion of other etiologies. Please pay attention to that clause. All the criteria carry that phrase, which means that there are many investigations with where they say we have to exclude related causes. So it is not that, oh, it's PCO, that's the commonest, why go in for other investigations? So there are a lot of other criteria which are also present. Institute of Health, evidence-based PCO, which is the international guideline which has come. Now there's also a 2023 recent publication of the international guidelines in which the similar criteria have been mentioned. So the main the underlying pathophysiology being that there's insulin resistance, and that results in hyperinsulinemia and causes most of the obesity and hirsutism. And it's also, I think today the first speaker, Deepthi, also said, it's not completely known pathophysiology. So I think more and more evidence is coming in as to different roles. So it's not completely just insulin resistance or hypothalamic axis. Obesity leads to excess adipose tissue, which also causes leptin and adiponectin and cytokines, and they cause alteration in the insulin signaling pathways, and they cause insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So the pathophysiology being chronic anovulation, there may be no irregular bleeding, there may be no increase in progesterone, and increased androgens and the enlarged ovaries. So each one of them has a pathophysiology in continuing the clinical features. Insulin resistance leads to basic hypoandrogenism and acanthosis nigricans. As we know, it's hyperpigmentation observed over the neck, underarms, groin, certain regions of the body. There's also something called an Hair-Ann syndrome in adolescents, which can be genetic and can be picked up. So if we go through the clinical features, there is central obesity, which is BMI being more than 30, oligomenorrhea in about 87%, amenorrhea in 26%. There can be prolonged or heavy periods, but no dysmenorrhea. So that again becomes important for a PCO diagnosis. Hyperandrogenism can be acne, hirsutism and acanthosis nigricans, any one of the features. And infertility, of course, which we will see it as an impact in later life. So we said obesity, 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 but there is a increasing recognition of a lean PCO or a thin PCO, which mainly we are seeing it in today because the underlying pathophysiology is more of stress and sometimes more of genetics rather than, of course, there is hormonal imbalance, but these cause an excess. So in lean and lean PCO or the thin PCO, they're called skinny PCOs in the West, and here the BMI is normal. If we investigate, there will be hormonal imbalance and they will have high androgen levels and insulin resistance and ovarian cysts. So here the treatment would be for all these symptoms, that is for the androgen levels, insulin resistance, but not for the obesity. So the management sort of follows the same. One of the commonest investigations everybody advises is the ultrasound, and it should be done. It's not that we want to define the follicles, but more so because it rules out other causes of ovarian tumors and excess hormonal imbalance. So that becomes very important in doing a routine ultrasound. So the summary of testing, if a PCO case comes, we would probably ask for FSH, LH, thyroid, then total testosterone if the hirsutism androgen excess is more, prolactin levels, the DHEAs for congenital adrenal hyperplasias, and the 17-OHP, many of them who come in later life with the TFS syndrome. So oral GTT and a fasting blood sugar as a baseline. We also do a HbA1c nowadays, which doesn't require fasting for many of the at-risk adolescents. A lipid profile again for the lifestyle guidance and as a baseline investigation, and the BMI, waist circumference, and blood pressure. A new anthropometric measurement is coming in as a neck circumference, which of course the normative values have not come. It's easier to do it. It doesn't need much of undressing or revealing. It's easy to do in school. A lot of studies are now coming out with the validity of neck circumference being similar to the waist circumference, but waist is the maximum. Okay, I'll just take a minute. Management. So we have the non-pharmacological, pharmacological, and there is a small role in some cases for surgical. There's a whole new article on the international guidelines of PCO, the latest being 2023. So the weight loss remains as primary for any child, adolescent with obesity. It causes a lot of improvement in pathophysiology. Lifestyle changes, smoking, exercise, and avoiding substance abuses. Estrogens. So estrogens are given as a combination pills with small dose of progesterone, low dose pills. It reduces acne, reduces free testosterone, and reduces weight very well. Progesterone if they are amenorrheic, and cyproterone if they have hirsutism. So combination of these drugs may also be used. There's a lot of studies on aerobic exercises helping. Vitamin D supplementation does not have much role. Amitriptyline may have antioxidant levels, and alpha lipoic acid can decrease the BMI and cycle. These are studies being done. What about surgery? This is not done in adolescents. It is done only in adults, and it is adults where all have failed. They do break some of the follicles and cause an improvement in the hormonal follicle. Of course, it is something which is in the experimental state. So for an adolescent, what should we do? What should we as a pediatrician and adolescent specialist be following up? PCOS can recur even if they have gone improved with lifestyle and certain guidance. It is sort of something which they have to maintain lifelong. Identify the risk groups, label them as at risk, rapid diagnosis. Psychiatric and psychotherapy is also important in PCOS. It is a lot of mental health issues in people who have all the features. Periodic examination of blood pressure, lipid metabolism, and NAFLD, finding out about the fatty liver. So these would be important with recommended OGTT if they are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chandrika.